Worldwide Developers Conference more than likely is going to be on June 1st of this year, and it's going to be different, of course, given the new online format, but there will still be a live keynote. It's just going to have a weird vibe because there's not going to be a big crowd that can applaud and cringe when Apple reveals the price of their next monitor stand. I know, that's like the best part, but in today's video, I wanted to go a little bit more in depth on what to expect at this event as a whole, given it's just about 2 months away. It's coming up pretty soon, and I know we're facing a huge crisis right now, but software is one of the things that should, for the most part, be untouched by this global phenomenon right now. So let's focus on the positives. Okay, let's begin. So before getting into software, I did want to mention that hardware does happen at Worldwide Developers Conference, but it's not a for sure thing. So I wanted to focus on the confirmed things that we absolutely know are happening, and that is what Worldwide Developers Conference is all about, which is software. So one piece of software that I'm not really expecting to change very much is macOS, because macOS Catalina was quite a dumpster fire for a lot of people. I know a lot of you guys have said it's perfectly fine for you, but there's been enough criticisms I've seen online and enough personal experience of bugginess and lack of any notable changes other than just splitting up iTunes that has made macOS Catalina quite frustrating for a lot of people. It's prevented a lot from updating and just sticking with Mojave for a long time, but I'm expecting the next version of macOS, whatever they decide to call it, probably to be focused more on performance and stability and just having as little bugs as possible. Likely not going to have that many major breakthroughs in design or anything. If there's going to be something major to macOS at this keynote, I would anticipate that it would be some type of launch of macOS ARM support, and Apple announcing to developers, like they announced in previous keynotes, that we're making this big transition to ARM CPUs, and I do mean that as the primary CPU. I'm not talking about like a little side security chip or a chip that's just supposed to run the touch bar. I'm talking about switching away from Intel, which there's lots of reputable leakers and analysts saying that Apple is making that move. Not sure if it's going to be at this keynote that they announce it, but it is happening eventually, so if there's anything big coming to macOS, that would be the big one. Just a modified version of macOS that is built on the ARM architecture that would probably have some type of emulation for x86 apps, and that would help them introduce like the first MacBook with ARM support likely, so that developers could start getting ready for it and third parties could start realizing, okay, we need to start adapting our apps quickly. When it comes to just the regular version of macOS that's going to run on all the Macs we have currently, I wouldn't expect too much. However, that may not be the case when it comes to iOS 14/iPadOS 14, which a lot of people are diving into the code of it already with early access somehow and suggesting that there should be some type of home screen redesign as well as a multitasking redesign. So it's possible that the iPhone multitasking will become more like the iPads, and we also heard the idea of the home screen becoming more of like a list view instead of kind of the equal distant grid that it is right now. I think that leak personally is leaning more towards the iPadOS side of things, because I'm expecting that given the Magic Keyboard case is going to be out and available for iPad Pros, they're gonna bring something big to iPadOS here. Like, they have to, right? Why not just wait to announce the Magic Keyboard at Worldwide Developers Conference? Why do they want to launch it in May? I think it's because they want people to be comfortable and familiar with the idea of the keyboard and trackpad or mouse support in general on the iPad. That way, when they launch the next version of iPadOS, they can take advantage of that user input, and there's no evidence to suggest this. This is just a huge personal request and prediction of mine. I think they're going to launch some major pro apps for the iPad Pro. So whether that means Final Cut or Logic or Xcode, I don't know, but there has to be something big, right? Like, there has to be. But outside of the iPad, when it just comes to the iPhone, iOS 14 is rumored to not be like a huge major redesign. I don't follow that logic of, well, iOS 7 was big design change, so it's been 7 years. iOS 14, that's how it works, right? I don't think so. I think that because iOS 13 was so buggy for so many people, it was decent for me. I really had very little bugs with my software, but not denying it doesn't exist, because I've seen plenty of people complaining about the bugs with iOS 13, a lot of people comparing it to iOS 11, and in that way, Apple is probably going to be treating iOS 14 similar to iOS 12. Little updates and little handy features here and there, but overall don't expect anything too drastic. It's probably going to be focused on performance and stability, and that could very well mean that everything that got iOS 13 is also going to get iOS 14. So congratulations to you iPhone 6S users. The only things I think they should focus on are redesigning pop-ups to be more like notifications options, so when I get a phone call, I don't want it to take up the entire display, or when there's 10% battery left, I don't want it popping up in the middle of my screen. I'm okay with just a notification dropping down. That would be fine. So iOS 14 is likely going to be nifty and helpful. You know, people will want the changes and they'll be happy to see them, but likely not anything, you know, fundamentally changing the entire OS. Now, when it comes to watchOS 7, we actually have heard quite a bit of rumors about what's coming. More recently, from the verifier, we heard that there's supposed to be a fresh new look, so they might be changing the whole fundamentals of the Apple Watch interface, but outside of that, of course, expect lots of new watch faces as we get every single year. It's possible we could get some type of sleep tracking support, and more recent reports are claiming maybe some changes to the activity rings for the entire lineup. And the bad news is watchOS 7 might not make it onto the Apple Watch Series 2, which a lot of people were hoping that would get watchOS 7, but it sounds like what they're doing with watchOS might be a bit more major, to the point that they're going to need more recent CPUs and GPUs to be able to sustain watchOS 7. So there's very little they can do with watchOS as a whole at this point, but adding these little things via software is pretty much all, you know, current Apple Watch Series 4 and 5 owners have to look forward to, given Series 6 is probably going to be a sleeper in more ways than one. Now, when it comes to tvOS, there has been a little bit of leaks of what could be coming, but I'm not necessarily sure if they're going to hold this off until June to announce, or this is just going to be in a small update we're getting for tvOS later this week. But there's supposed to be screen time options coming, as well as kids mode, and perhaps some type of activity workouts that people can follow along with through the Apple TV. You know, very little groundbreaking changes with tvOS, but just kind of nifty things, given, hey, a lot of people are stuck at home right now, so being able to stay active and follow along with activity coaches on the big screen, maybe pair it with the Apple Watch in that process. You could have another aspect of the ecosystem. You know, there's not much Apple Watch to Apple TV communication, so having like workout guides on there could be fun. And I also feel a little bit weird about there being a specific version for kids, you know, a kid mode version of Apple TV, because are there a lot of parents that are just putting like $150 Apple TVs in each of their kids' bedroom? Probably not, but yeah, I get it. I know that's likely not what they mean by kids mode. It's more so like when you want to hand the Apple TV remote over to a kid so that they can do stuff. You don't want them pulling up Apple TV Plus and watching, you know, much of anything on there, because it's probably not safe. But also, if you're making a kids mode version for the Apple TV, don't give them a glass remote. You know, that's just going to end horribly. Now, when it comes to hardware, there's actually a huge list of stuff that's in the wildcard category that's not quite in the, yeah, we're pretty sure this is coming out at this event. When it comes to the wildcards that could be unveiled at June, things like AirTags, which we've been waiting on for months and months and months now, but sounds like due to production restraints in China, they may have not been ready yet, so they've been pushed off, and even if they announce them at Worldwide Developers Conference, they more than likely won't deliver short after. They probably won't be available until September or the fall, so that's why it's also pretty likely they wouldn't talk about AirTags at this event. But things we should expect at least sometime soon, maybe this will be at June, is a new iMac, given CoinX has a near perfect track record, and he said that there would be a new Mac Mini and iMac coming. All we really got for the new Mac Mini was storage boosts, not CPU or GPU changes or anything really. All they did was update the default storage option, so maybe that's coming to the iMac, I don't know, but we did hear reports that Apple is working on mini LED displays to implement into future products, so possibly some of that is coming this year. And iMac Pro was originally unveiled at Worldwide Developers Conference in 2017, so if they wanted to launch the new iMac Pro with a mini LED display, which Quo claims is happening, maybe unveiling it at this conference would make sense, because it could get people hyped for it, and they'll say, you know, it's coming at the end of this year, and it'll be like December 31st when they actually drop it. But, you know, we got the Mac Pro and the Pro display last year, and it would just make sense to complement that with an update to the iMac Pro, because they've basically done nothing with it since 2017. But again, not really concrete leaks and rumors at this point, so that's not absolutely for sure happening. One thing I would lean more towards being like, I'm pretty sure they got to do something with this at this event, is the 14-inch or 13-inch MacBook Pro, whatever the size ends up being, because with the MacBook Air getting the Magic Keyboard and removing the butterfly keys and having 256 gigs by default, the 13-inch MacBook Pro still rocking butterfly keys and still with a default of 128 gigs. That seems incredibly outdated, and honestly, I'd be fine if they decided to update before this event actually takes place. But if they're planning something for the 14-inch MacBook Pro, there's definitely a ton of demand for it, you know, giving it thinner bezels, bringing the escape key back, doing everything they did to the 16-inch MacBook Pro, just on a more smaller footprint. It would make sense to unveil that at this event. There's a lot of developers watching, and the timeline just makes sense, so that's something I could see happening likely. When it comes to new iPads, I don't know. You know, we got the 10.2-inch iPad last September. There's not really any many leaks suggesting that a new iPad Air or iPad Mini are coming like within the next couple months. Quo said they're working on mini LED versions of future iPad Airs or iPad Minis, but that's not really supposed to happen at this event. So I think we're not gonna get new iPads at this one. I could be wrong about that, but honestly, all I would like is Apple to ditch Lightning on the Magic Keyboard and Magic Mouse and Magic Trackpad. Just embrace USB-C or Qi charging across the lineup. That's why I'm rocking this today, of course. And there are still a few rumors brewing around of the Apple Premium over-ear headphones. Of course, the next generation Apple TV with the A12 chip. They could decide to launch that before this event, but if they don't, maybe delaying all of these launches for that event makes some sense. But given the iPhone 9 is rumored to come out maybe like in a couple days, that's why I'm not including that in my predictions for June. But that's pretty much the state of everything we should expect at this event. It sounds like it should be really, really packed full of software and hardware announcements, and I'm very, very excited to see it, despite how awkward it might be when Tim Cook walks out on stage, says good morning, and no one's there. Or just Phil Schiller in the back, clapping it up. He's the only one in the crowd. Would be kind of funny, I guess, but they probably won't do that. So what are you most excited for at Worldwide Developers Conference 2020? Feel free to hit me up over on Twitter or join my Discord if you want to talk more about it there. This is your Apple Sheep here, and make sure you stock up on that Vitamin C Apple Watch band, available now. I'll see you in the next one.